starting.
I'll turn on my video.
Carol, are you able to fill up the agenda? Will that show?
She asked me and I told her we usually don't do that.
Well, the agenda, not the camera, but usually the agenda will show.
My fault, Carol.
All right, we can get started.
Okay. Yes. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Today is Monday, June 24th, and this is the Finance Committee, and we're going to call the meeting to order. It's 5 o'clock. We'll start with public comment. Any person may directly address the committee at this time on any item not on the agenda. Seeing none, I will move on to item 3, and that's the approval of the minutes.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 4 is the water rate study request for proposal with presentation by member Christina Wendover.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, and hello, Finance Committee members. The city is looking to start soliciting proposals from qualified firms to conduct a water rate study to assist the city in determining how the city funds the administration, operation, maintenance, and capital replacement and improvements of its water system. The study is intended to evaluate all current water rates, system revenue generation, and full cost recovery. The study will provide recommendations for revenue structures that will comply with all federal, state, and local regulations and will meet all debt service requirements. We are requesting that a rate study will include the following details, and that includes the detailed cost of service analysis, a determination of current and future revenue needed to provide water services, an assessment of the existing customer service fee structure, an exploration of various options for changes to the rate structure, such as meter fees, conservation fees, bulk water usage, and recommendations for methods of communicating utility costs to ratepayers. We anticipate the submission of a draft study. We have listed 2024. I will be presenting 3 requests for proposals, so timelines can be modified depending on the discussion that we have following my presentation, and also a timeline based on what consultants are able to accommodate. Following the acceptance of a draft rate study, the consultant would be required to provide presentations back to the Finance Committee and the City Council, and also provide public presentations for community input. And ultimately, we are recommending that the Finance Committee approve the 2024 water rate study request for proposals as written, again with timelines being flexible, and so that we can start receiving proposals and bringing those back to the committee and ultimately the City Council. I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any additional background if there is any needed. Also, there is a draft proposal attached to your packet for your review, and in case you have any questions on that, happy to answer those as well.
What was our budget on this? Did it stay in there somewhere?
From the capital improvement plan? I don't know. Right, Patty, how much do we budget?
We did budget an amount, I want to say 25,000. Some of that was based on what we just paid. Some of
So what is the anticipated turnaround on this? I mean, I know it can be flexible, but we're hoping to have this done by the end of the year,
Yeah, that's about the timeline that we were looking at. Staff will be going through an RFP process with potentially three different projects. So if we wanted to like stagger them out, we could do that. But based on just kind of looking at other similar RFPs and projects like this, we think that by the end of the year would be doable.
And implemented on next fiscal year.
Yeah,
For
I think,
July 1.
I think if there's if we get to the point where there's a need for a rate study change, we're trying to give ourselves enough room so that we can go through the Prop 218 process, have everything in place potentially for 7/1/5.
And the last time that we did rate increase, we did it in 5-year increments. Are we planning on doing the same thing?
I think that'll be part of the recommendation is to see what they'll look at the overall budget, possibly a phased increase, yeah. The other part I just want to call out is both for this one, but then also for the impact fee one, is to look at anything related to SGMA and the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and what that impact will be on our budget, both for the rate study, but then also for impact fees. So if there are new projects that'll be eligible, that's something that we want to incorporate this time. That was not a thing when we did both of those last time.
Do we think all three of them could be done? I mean, because that is kind of taxing on staff time by the end of the year? Or is there some kind of the three, is there some kind of priority we should be looking at, considering?
I think we'll probably, I mean, if we look at it, I think the impact fee study can be moved out a little bit because that doesn't have the same, requirements for fee changes. So that's just basically is the council adopting the study, and then if there is a decision to change those fees, then you do that as part of your, as part of the normal fee schedule change, where it's not like a Prop 218 process, which the other one would be. So I think our goal, I think they're different tasks, and while they somewhat involve the same people, they not, I'd say the water rate study is probably going to be a little bit more Daniel and Dave Peters. Space needs studies probably is going to be much more this staff. So I think some of them, I think they can run concurrently. I think we just want to stagger maybe when they're due and when we have to kind of review them all, so we're not, having to do that all at once. But, as we started to put together one, I figured we should probably just put together all of them so that you could review them.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, great. All right, then, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to, authorize staff.
This one for the rate study, for the water rate study?
Yeah.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we'll move on to item number 5, Development Impact Fee Update and Nexus Study Request for Proposal. Presentation by Member Christina Wendover.
Good evening, thank you. The city is requesting proposals from experienced and qualified consulting firms to assist us with the preparation of a development impact fee update and a nexus study. The city assesses a variety of development impact fees on new development to mitigate the infrastructure costs generated by new development activity. The city's impact fee program has to comply with the Mitigation Fee Act under California Government Code Section 66000 et sequitur, also known as Assembly Bill 1600. and the requirements of Assembly Bill 602, which was effective January 1st, 2002. The most recent City of Kingsburg impact fee study was conducted in 2015, so we are just looking to update that. The current impact fees include traffic, public safety, general government, parks and recreation, water, storm drain, sewer connections, combined recreation, area acquisition and improvement fees, and administrative fees. The consultant would work closely with the city and stakeholders. The project is also authorized and was recently adopted in the fiscal year 2025 capital improvement budget. Both Finance Committee and the City Council would review the proposals, including any award of potential contracts for services. Staff is recommending that the Finance Committee approves the development impact fee study request for proposals as written, and to authorize staff to review those as well for responses. We have included a proposed RFP. Happy to answer any questions or provide any additional background information. As stated previously, submission dates can be altered and other timelines can be altered if needed.
I just have a comment. We did budget, 50,000 in this
Thank
budget.
you.
In this budget,
Yeah, and I would say this one is a little more consultant intensive because of the number of fees that there are. We have them doing a comparative of other jurisdictions' impact fees as well, so some research there on what that will take. One thing that might affect our side is that the SKF is in the process of updating their master sewer, their whole sewer master plan update, which may indicate what our responsibility will be for Kingsburg lines. So, just a reminder, city's responsible for all the internal lines, district's responsible for their main lines and obviously the treatment of it. We contract with them so they come out and clean our lines and do that stuff. So that's part of the fee that residents pay as part of their property tax bill every year. So we don't necessarily have we don't have staff or anything like that, but it is technically owned by the city and our responsibility. But they're doing that study update, which might drive the potential change to our sewer connection impact fee, depending upon what we might need internally and how new development could impact that. So I think we're supposed to get an update on that in the next couple of weeks. There is a date set, I just can't recall, from SKF. So their consultant is working on that and is doing that in conjunction with the 3 cities in the county. But I don't want to get too far out in front of our process when, those improvements will drive potentially our fee update specifically for sewers. The actual Nexus update for all these things is driven by, so if you're looking at traffic, for example, if we think that there's going to be a traffic light or a roundabout or something in a certain location, the consultant works with Dave Peters' office and they establish a anticipated cost for what that will be, and so then that helps derive what the fee, like a peak trip fee, will be for development, which is why now the state is requiring these Nexus updates get updated every 8 years. Driven probably more by the development community than local cities.
A quick question on, we talk about, it calls for 3 you call out in here that they need to attend 3 meetings, that the Finance Committee and the City Council. There isn't any mention about a meeting to gather input from the community. I'm just wondering if we shouldn't call that out specifically. I know it was on the water rate study.
And we can do that. I mean, I think the water rate study is gonna have an impact more on the community than the developer impact fee. I guess if there's I would imagine that we would invite developers, or at least the local ones, to come meet, but, I mean, that their input is mostly gonna be as low as possible, but if there's a desire, I think, to more specifically identify, what those meetings will consist of, I don't have any problem with that, or if there's, more outreach, or...
Well, we talk about, gathering input from community stakeholders, but I just on that meetings, we didn't call it out specifically. So it does seem like the language in here, talks about our desire to have input from the community, so I'm just...
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you want public input about, like, what kind of, if we should have additional impact fees?
No, my concern is just affording any feedback that people have a desire to share with us, and yes, they're welcome to come to the finance committee. I just want to be, given that we're probably increasing fees, I just want to make sure that we give people the opportunity to be heard.
Okay.
I mean, we could just spell out, do you want something separate, or maybe like a second city council meeting? Or do you want like a separate workshop?
Like a community event?
Yeah, do you have like a preference on that?
We could do like a pop-up or host a booth at a festival or something like that.
Just given the natural process that it would take, how many opportunities for public comment would the public have in this process, start to finish? Between finance, council, anything else? If we don't add anything, how many different opportunities are they gonna have to come give their 2 cents to this?
So the way that it's written now is that there's 2 meetings for finance committee, and then at least 1 meeting with the city council, and then it says, if needed, an additional city council meeting to follow up if council, or, if something comes from that draft. So I would say 3 at minimum. I mean, we could, and then if we want, we could, I think we put if needed, because if you guys are like, hey, we're good, we adopted it, there's no reason to come back to another meeting, because they're gonna, they'll bill us for that, right? So I would say at least 3, 4 if desired. But if you want us to spell out something different, that's okay too.
I would say that that's my only thing, is it's, including this meeting, there's 4 separate opportunities already for them to come speak to their concerns. 3 meetings once we have numbers. I think that's, if it's gonna cost us money to host additional ones, I think we kinda have to weigh that.
Well, you said 2 finance committee meetings, so what's the first one? The second one, I'm assuming, is they're presenting what they come up with?
Yeah, so you would have input, work on a draft, and then hopefully with input, we'll have like a proposed final to then discuss at that point. And then if what we get in the final presentation, as I read it, we would say we would have another meeting, or if the final draft is sufficient, then we would have approval then. Is that how you understood it?
I mean, I think for the finance committee, you have the first meeting, they're gonna bring some draft information, they're gonna get feedback from this group. And that'll be an opportunity for, the public to attend as well. And then we'll put that in what we would call essentially a final form, so that this group can make a recommendation to the city council, like, hey, this is what we feel comfortable with, we're gonna make recommendations, so that would occur. And then the city council will then hear it, and if the other members of the council, want, I guess, another, there's a lot of input, but I would say you're gonna have, which is not even really included in this, but if people are interested, we're gonna put out these RFPs, the RFPs are gonna come back, you guys are gonna review the RFPs in general to pick a consultant. I mean, theoretically, someone could come to that meeting, an interested community member, and provide input. Then the council is gonna adopt an agreement with that consultant, so theoretically, they could come to that one. Then the actual consultant will do the work, and so you'll have, if they're really interested, right, regardless of, I mean, I would assume you probably wanna wait until there are draft findings and you start considering what the amounts are gonna be, but if you're passionate about it from the development community, and say, hey, I don't like the structure of what you guys have right now, and I want you to start discussing that before we even get into it, I think there's, they'll have time to do that when you award, this group makes recommendation of a contract to the council, and then the council considers that contract at a council meeting. So, but, it certainly is at your pleasure.
And there is plenty of opportunity
Yeah.
in the process. Okay. No.
And that does say, I think we do ask for like a per meeting cost for rates. So if at any point during this, it says, hey, we gotta have 2-3 more meetings, I think then we'll have to make that consideration as part of the final budget.
Well, I think it's just affording input, in the process, so. Oh, very good. One last, just more technical question. On the water rate study, we had, a general requirement that the consultant had to have a business license and $1 million liability. We don't say anything about liability insurance in this RFP, I don't think.
There is on page 8, so B and C has, the B is liability, cost, and responsibility, and then C is permits and licenses. But I will say, so, the purpose of this for sure is to review all portions of it, but, Mike has these too, so before they actually go out, any of that technical language, his is, I think, gonna be, it's gonna be less substantive about like what we want on a front project. His will be more about what you just brought up, so he absolutely will sign off on that too.
Well, just having them different formats.
Yeah,
Seems,
they are. Well, full disclosure, we pulled examples from other places, right? So some of them, one of the rate study one was from one place, and then the impact one is very similar to the one we used last time. I just didn't have a Word document of the rate study that we did for the water rate study. That was before I was here last time, but they are in a little bit, I will agree, in different formats.
Good. Very good. Okay. Any more questions? Okay, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve in current format and release for responses.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item number 6, City Hall Site Needs Assessment and Alternative Analysis Report Request for Proposal, presentation by Member Dino Wendover.
All right. So during our last Finance Committee meeting, we discussed preparing a request for proposals for City Hall needs assessment. And Finance Committee authorized us to seek council approval, also to create an RFP. And so council approved that at their last city council meeting. And so now we are presenting a draft request for proposal for a City Hall needs assessment. Just to give some background, we believe that this assessment is the logical starting point for determining our options, including an existing conditions report of the building we are in now, 1401 Draper Street, an analysis of our existing operations, staff surveys, 20-year population projections, and then additional identified needs. This would also allow for public input to discuss alternative site options to match the community needs. Again, Finance Committee and Council have already directed staff to develop the RFP, and so we've attached a draft for consideration tonight to solicit interested architecture and engineering firms to provide a bid for services for the identified scope of work. Based on similar studies done recently, we expect this to cost between $50,000 and $75,000 to complete. The project is authorized as the recently adopted fiscal year 2025 capital improvement budget. And we will also give the Finance Committee and the City Council the opportunity to review the competitive contracts RFPs that we received. I'm happy to answer any questions, go over any additional background information, etc.
I have a question. In the fiscal impact, you were mentioning ARPA funds, but I recall budgeting and general government funds to $75,000.
For this one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if that's where it was
But
at.
I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that we're on the same page.
Wherever it was approved, I.
We did budget $25,000, but in a different fund.
Okay.
To 10.
If it's in 210, then that's my
But
mistake.
we can always, do a
Whatever it
budget
was approved at, I
adjustment.
think, honestly, I was trying to go off of memory. That's what I thought we had it at.
Any other questions?
Let's get it started.
All right, so,
My input will be that, we give the opportunity to the staff that works at City Hall to, be involved in the process. I think it's exciting, and also it's very important that, knowing the need, and also from the community, but more for the staff that is already at City Hall.
Thank you. I included that in the executive summary.
Yes, I
I'll
know
make
you
sure
did.
to identify the information in the RFP in case it's not spelled out clearly enough.
It does say in here too that the existing building is not viewed as a viable long-term solution, so, it talks about it in there too, because I know that was a conversation when the council talked about that. I think we needed to get this started, so that's,
I think we all know what direction we're going.
Yep.
I think we know
just so the consultants know too.
it's gonna be most likely somewhere different,
Mhm.
which is a good thing. Let's just get through the process. Let's get it going. There are a lot of people in cramped spaces that don't need to be in.
I will entertain a motion.
We'll make that motion to approve the release of the RFP.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Okay, item number 7, Kingsburg Business Park Highway Commercial Sign Update, presentation by member Alexander Henderson.
Okay, this is not about an RFP, so.
Then I'm out.
This is a different topic. If you recall, we've been kind of working for several years, to unwind the ownership of the, Business Park Highway commercial sign. That original sign was approved by the city's Architecture Review Committee in 2004, and eventually, constructed privately. There was an LLC, an owners association, that was created at that time that was intended to assess, the businesses and property owners in there to help take care of maintenance. However, shortly after the business park, got up and going, the Great Recession occurred, and there was, basically, several years of non-activity out there, and ultimately the LLC itself, went defunct. Over the last several years, as there's been more development out there, we continue to get, inquiries, from new businesses about advertising on the sign, but, because we don't own the sign or did not previously own the sign, we were, unable to help them, in the immediate, but, did continue to try and work through that issue because, we knew that it was not going to go away, and there was only going to continue to be more interest in the sign itself. So ultimately, we were able to work with the previous property owner who donated the sign to the city. And so since then, the Economic Development Committee has been working through different options, which includes the option of digitizing a portion of the sign space. Jolene reached out to several local sign manufacturers, A-plus signs. Honestly, was really the only one that got back to us, both in a timely manner or at all. And they actually came to the June 5th EDC meeting to answer some questions and provide some input. So given, the EDC is kind of still working through individual options, but given there will be a financial component, staff thought it was prudent to come and have some discussion with this group before we move forward with any next steps. So there are a few options, which include different sizes of digital retrofitting, as well as just the refurbishment of the existing sign. I do want to note that all of the options include repainting the structure, updating the electrical, and then retrofitting to LED lighting. There are some different financing options that could be explored. One is that the city provides the capital costs and then just recoups that through ad space revenue. Number two is financing the project through the sign manufacturer and paying debt via ad space revenue. So there was some more information that we got after the agenda went out. This both essentially from A-plus signs that you have. One is a kind of a financing option, just so you can see that, and then the other is just like a mock-up of some potential marketing that we could do, which would really be for number three, which is marketing the sign and attempting to underwrite the capital improvements in exchange for long-term ad revenue. So essentially, businesses would be providing the upfront capital to us in exchange for a 2-year agreement, to advertise on the sign. Our thought right now is to explore at least option number three, at least by reaching out to those businesses in the business park, giving them rights of first refusal. The EDC did talk about potentially, if there was not enough ad revenue from that group, then expanding it, but trying to keep limiting any advertisement to Kingsburg businesses. But ultimately, obviously, that would be a decision of the city council, were they so wanting to do that. So, I mean, there's not really a recommendation or a decision to be made on finance or anything today. This is more informational so that you can see what the EDC has been working on, so that you can, provide any input if you have any about digital versus just refurbishment, sizing of the digital. So that's the intent of our discussion today, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. There was a prolonged conversation with the EDC and the sign maker at their meeting in June, but we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page before we can start reaching out potentially to businesses in the business park. But ultimately, the long-term goal is to get the sign back up and running and looking nice. And if you do drive by, you'll see that both sides actually have really good visibility. So whether you're driving north or south, this refurbishment would include both sides of the sign. It only shows one, but anything would be dual-sided, whether it's just the refurbishment of the existing or the retrofit to digital. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions and open to your input or discussion.
Does it have to be a business park only advertising, or since it's now going to be updated, can it just be general business in Kingsburg?
Well, so that was some of the discussion we had, was whether or not we even remove the word business park and just put something like, Valcomin, to make it more general. Even if you offered first right of refusal to the folks in the business park, I think their thought was, hey, they're the ones that it was originally intended for. obviously, if you end up with a digital component, you could potentially do more advertising than what the static spaces are as currently exists. It's really, it's a decision, it used to be more of a decision for Caltrans. I guess they've kind of gotten out of the business of, deciding what can go up there. There's supposedly the one thing that they really, are stringent about is the, you know, how frequently the sign moves and also the illumination, to which I talked to the A-plus guy about the Selma.
The sun?
The sign, like the brightest sign I've ever seen that flashes at you, that is like, seizure inducing, but he was just like, yeah, I don't know, they're, you know, that's what car dealerships want, the flashy and sort of grab your attention, but apparently Caltrans hasn't gotten, too sideways with them yet, so, it's really a decision, you know, for the council. We would probably have to amend, our sign code to a certain degree, but, I think that will come, you know, if and when we make a decision on ultimately what we end up doing.
The financing is odd to me, the leasing portions, when you look at those numbers, how much they cost, basically in interest if we're leasing it, those numbers don't run concurrent with the amounts that we're financing. I don't understand how they come up with those numbers. It's, you know, anywhere from $40,000 to $51,000, but.
Like if it's a percentage, you mean?
Yeah, is that something that you think would be best to do?
Honestly, no. I mean, I think, I want to explore something that has the city out no money. So, you know what I mean? Like, this was not our problem we're trying to problem solve right now. I mean, I think if it came down to it, I think we could easily get the refurbishment alone.
The 80-something thousand?
Underwritten. Like, I don't think that will be difficult. I think the question becomes whether or not we want to go digital and what that looks like. So,
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. That's the thing, right? So, but if you can get, between 12 and 15 ad revenues to give you, give you a 2-year deal, and they're giving you, $25,000 each, which I think is probably pretty competitive for what they're paying somewhere else right now. Then I think it becomes much more, it's feasible, right? Then it's $300,000 and they're underwriting it, and, and then maybe, once, you get out of 2 years, then you're into potentially, money-making, category, but I just don't, my opinion to the EDC was like, I don't want to, oh yeah, we'll get, all this money in ad revenue, right? But then it's like, well, no, then we didn't, and now we're the ones on the hook for, this sign that it's not, we're just trying to do right by what's out there, it's built, let's make it look nice. But I think that my suggestion is to try and, Jolene and I kind of talked about, we have a lot of contacts in the business park area, we know a lot of those people are, so we can kind of have informal discussions with them about, okay, are you interested? And if you are interested, like at what level? Like what's a realistic level? Because I guess the other thing is then you can get to a point where you try and, if it doesn't work, if none of these things work for us, then you try and work with the sign company, and they take on that risk, and then they get, that's what they do for a business, and, but then we may have less control on that perspective, I don't know what that would look like.
I think with the sign going digital, the devil is 100% in the details of that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It's just a general overview, but I think that what's allowed to go on those signs, the city does not have control over what's going on in the biggest sign in the entire town. That's problematic. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you limit it to, but you're just talking about maybe like, because sort of like editorial control.
I'm talking about anything that could go on there that could diminish the Kingsburg experience.
Right. Yeah, and I think that would be, I don't know how that's a good question.
Do we have to amend the sign
Yeah,
code
100%.
to make sure we could enforce something that violates the policy?
Well, I think that,
We have
I
to
think
require
maybe what we
approval.
could have from editorial control, you know, is we would have the arrangement with so the way that the digital signs work are, they're controlled entirely remotely now. So we wouldn't do that, but we'd have a contract with a third-party vendor, and basically the business would just be contacting the third-party vendor and say, hey, I want this change, I'm gonna put it up there. Perhaps there's a way for us to have, you know, while we don't have to do the actual work, we just have final approval, as long as it's, I'm assuming you're just talking about like nothing inappropriate, right? Like, we're not gonna be like, well, don't want you, I think when we were talking about limiting who would advertise, we were just talking about like someone who has a business license in the city of Kingsburg, which we might have to say a physical address too, right? Because you can have a business license but not being in the city of Kingsburg, right? So I think we
We
have to
also end up with places that are wanting ad space for shorter durations, like the ag show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That does have an access to staying here in Kingsburg.
Mhm.
It's gonna get us that occupancy
Mhm.
money. But that's what I mean, like, there's gonna be a lot that goes into a digital sign outside of paying for it too.
Yes. Well, and that's the part where I think you have to do a lot of that work up front, so whether that's through a sign code or through the agreements that you have. Because what I don't want is a bunch of, I just don't, there's no one here who can run the sign, right? I think Jolene could be the go-between where someone says, hey, I want to get on that sign, who is it? And then we give them the contact, it's like, this is what you gotta do, you gotta send your information to them. You're the one coming up with you gotta come up with the graphics, right? You gotta work with a graphic, designer. I mean, it has in here, for example, right, it's like, first digital ad upload is free, and additional ad changes are $75 per occurrence, right? So that's essentially to pay for the third-party company to make that change, which they would do remotely, they're in Arizona, or wherever they're at. But I agree, I think all of it is, has to be vetted, and I think there's opportunity there to, provide some value to the businesses that are out there, and then also refurbish, that sign, so, it gets used for what it was supposed to use, except for just for Sonic, now open apparently.
For today, the only thing that we're looking to do is to give staff direction to find a market interest, correct?
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that you guys are, just like, whoa, you guys are out there doing this, and we haven't really talked about it with you. Yeah, today it's just, there's no hard decisions being made on financing or anything. I just wanted to keep you guys up to speed with what was happening with EDC as they try and, as we work with sign company as well. But, certainly open to, if you like certain sizes of the digital sign, my question, is that we've gotten a lot of inquiries. I mean, obviously it's not a digital sign now, but we've gotten a lot of inquiries just for the static space, right? So, what's the ROI difference between the digital versus just the static space? Obviously, I think, the digital one probably gives you more, it moves so often, right? What does it say, like every 8 seconds every other minute, I guess is good.
540 a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing it didn't have on here, which I was talking to Jolene about, is that I think 99 is about 70,000. I think its average daily traffic is about 70,000 vehicles a day, so I think that would be something to put on there too, is what the average traffic is. So, we're just working through that still too.
So, I'm just trying to picture, the city will be in charge of the sign, the finances too, in the maintenance?
Well, we're the owners of it, so as long as we're the owners, yes, we would be in charge of, if we're gonna do the underwriting thing, for example, yes, we would be the ones collecting the funds, which would then be used to either, you could potentially do the financing so that you have less payments, or we could just say, no, we're gonna wait until we raise enough capital and then just cut a check, and then they do it. But then the intent would be is that long-term, right, you're collecting ad revenue, and that those funds should be used to maintain the sign, so.
And just to be awash, we're looking to have 32 separate businesses sign up for 1 year, and that doesn't include any maintenance. I mean, that's a significant number. You know, how long is it gonna take for us to get 33?
That's at what price?
That's at the $393 price,
At 12,000 each though?
at 12,000, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, I would say it would be,
If we do a 2-year,
2-year.
it's still 16 businesses.
No, I agree.
17 businesses,
Yeah.
and it doesn't include, when we do this, we have to start projecting out money. If it's $80,000 to repaint it, that doesn't include any kind of maintenance on a giant electric billboard and the electricity costs.
All those things, right?
So I think that realistically, we have to look at least what I would like to see when you guys are out doing that is to come up with a number, and then we'll pencil that out to see if that's even realistic to putting $400,000, and that $400,000 is not even a true number of what that's gonna cost us. That's $400,000 to get the sign lit one time.
Yeah, that's to get it operational, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think you're looking at more like $500,000, probably, so.
Yep, no, I agree. I mean, I think all those things are, if you do the $400,000, if you do the big one, right, so.
And I mean, if the market's there, great.
Yeah, right.
I don't have any other questions.
What happens outside of 6 AM midnight?
I'm assuming, I haven't clarified that, but I'm assuming you're supposed to shut them down from a Caltrain standpoint, but I don't know.
Oh,
I mean, I don't know if that occurs everywhere or not. I'm guessing not, right? Yeah.
It does not everywhere, maybe somewhere.
Yeah.
I would assume that they're saying that because it's not as valuable time.
Could be, right, yeah.
because like you speaking,
What about the
a
truckers?
lot of people are not sleeping during that time.
Yeah.
Plus that time, with all the construction going, they're gonna be looking at that sign for extra time because everyone has to slow down so much.
Yeah, right. Ooh.
Put up a whole video.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. I will move to item number 8, other business. Okay, then item number 9, I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you.